topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, hello and welcome to Bill Martinez Live. Glad you could join us. We got lots to catch up on. Of course, a lot has been happening these last several days, not to mention all that's going on in Iran as the negotiations, will they or won't they happen? And, how do you feel about it? I mean, some people feel like we're doing everything we can do. Of course, you hear from one side, which is the anti-Trump side, and anything to talk about Iran and about the way the war is being conducted. They're super critical. I mean, forget about what they did and didn't do during the 12 years, 8 years with Obama and 4 years with Joe Biden with Iran. They kept kicking this problem up the road. I mean, this has been kicked up the road for 47 years, as you're aware of. And, look at what's happened there. I mean, they were so close to being nuclear. And of course, we know that they're untrustworthy. I don't know why anybody would believe them when they said that they had missiles, supersonic missiles capability that they'd gotten from Russia. But, they couldn't go that far. And then we found out, they could go pretty far now, and we found out the hard way. And fortunately, some of that has been, contained at this point. Either they've run out of ammunition or they're just afraid to bring it out from the underground, because between Israel and the way the United States is controlling air traffic and that, as soon as these launchers come out from underground, well, then, it's kind of like the game of whack-a-mole. Then the United States is constantly monitoring any movement and to do any kind of counterattack against any missile attack. But meanwhile, it would appear that Iran is pretty much on its last leg. But, I've maintained that because of the nature of this, this radical group, this terrorist group with the RIGC, the local law enforcement, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis and that, this is really, by definition, it's a death cult. And what happens with death cults, they just don't surrender. They're just not going to lay their arms down. And we should know better. But the problem that we have, there's a couple of issues. I mean, first of all, you got people here in America that are not supporting, the president. They're not coming alongside to support the president or the military personnel that are there for the sake of freedom, not only for the world, but certainly specifically for Iran and the 90 million plus people who have been oppressed and living under this terrorist regime. And, according to Yair Pinto, when we interviewed him, about a month ago, when I said the casualty rate was somewhere around 40,000, he goes, "Oh, Bill, that's too low. It's like 82,000 people at least." And that was a month ago. So God only knows what that number has increased. And then, of course, the news over before the weekend was that there was a woman that they were going to execute. And to hear the details of what they do to these women when they execute them, it's not some just, hey, let's just go ahead and kill them. No, we've got to abuse them and just do all kinds of just heinous acts, including gang raping these women, as if dying is not bad enough. We're just going to put you through all kinds of misery. I mean, this is just inhuman. And these are the kind of people that we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. And I know it's hard for us on the West to think about this, but this is the reality of what these people in Iran are dealing with. And I think that, in my humble opinion, I've maintained, first of all, I wasn't one for the pause. Now, I think the pause, as far as the pause is concerned, okay for, public consumption here in the United States. But when you're conducting war, you've got to take it to its end conclusion, because you can't blame Donald Trump, and you can't blame this administration for doing everything they can, to kind of solve the problem, regardless of what the Pope might say and how he wants to enter into the conversation, which is a whole nother thing that we'll talk with our next guest. And Scott Powell is with us now. Scott he is a author and member of the Committee on This Present Danger, China, and a fellow at the Discovery Institute. And Scott Powell joins us now. Scott, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. You're looking like you're still looking at your equipment, but anyway, maybe you can't hear me yet. I don't know. No, Scott's while Scott's kind of getting his equipment in order and his sound and audio set, well, then we'll continue. But like I said, the thing that was a bit disconcerting was, the Pope getting involved in giving his opinion. Now, there's one thing for the Pope as a religious figure to talk about things that have to do with theology and the Catholic faith. And for me, I would have much rather heard from the Pope that he was praying for peace. That's okay. But some additional comments, I believe, were not fitting, for the Pope, because, as I was sharing with some other gentlemen over the weekend, I said, you can always tell when somebody is talking and saying things that are not appropriate and are disruptive, because what will happen is that when things are being said in the realm of opinion, and certainly from a position where they're really not, they're really not credible. Let's put it that way. It causes disunity. But when, as the Pope said, he says, he said afterwards, this was after his comments. And of course, the difficult thing we've had with that is I've been trying to get a clear word for word statement and a record of exactly what the Pope said and exactly what Donald Trump said. Because, in a lot of ways, we're relying too much on the media, and the media, what's going to happen. Everything's going to be slanted. A lot of people were not aware that the Pope the day before had met with David Axelrod. David Axelrod's from Chicago. The Pope, as you know, grew up in Chicago. It's been said that he's a registered Democrat, which is a whole nother issue anyway, if that's really the case. I don't know that to be the case, but this is what some of the reports have stated, is that he's a registered Democrat. But anyway, be that as it may, he did meet with David Axelrod the day before, and then the next day he makes a statement that was kind of, targeted towards Trump. And I got to have some compassion for the president, who's been trying to execute this war, with all the people here, even his own country, fellow Americans. Fellow Americans are one thing, but you get the media, and then you get the Democratic Party and those that are, that have Trump derangement syndrome, and you get them involved, and and they're nipping at his heels, and the poor guy's trying to do the best he can, for America, for our military, and for the world. I mean, here's all these European nations even that, they got more to lose than we do. I mean, here you got a terrorist country and a regime right at their doorstep, with, now we know, missiles that could end up in their mailbox. And they're kind of laissez-faire about it. And you got to be kidding me. It's like, wait a minute, why don't you do what you can to offer to help out and help with a solution here? Do whatever you can, because we've got to bring this regime. This regime is the closest it's ever been in 47 years to either changing out or buckling its knee once and for all. I don't think that they last. I think it's a regime change, undoubtedly. But the people have to be empowered. The 92 million people have to be empowered. But see, again, there's lots to learn here. This is what happens when you surrender your right to defend yourself, and you have no guns, then you can have a tyrannical government come in and take over your lives and do the kind of things that this terrorist regime has perpetrated upon their own people. So note to self, note to Americans and those that want us to, eliminate our Second Amendment right from our Constitution. This is a case in point of what can happen when you can't defend yourself and you're relying on a government that is tyrannical. And don't think that the United States, even though we have a Constitution, that you think that you're covered. And I think that if you heard at all the speech from Justice Thomas pointing out how progressives are really anti-constitutional. They're doing everything. They want to replace the Constitution with this, progressive, these progressive theories. I think we have Scott in the waiting room, and we're still trying to see if he's connected. Scott, are you connected? Can we hear you? Can you hear me? Scott, can you? Well, we're still not. I can hear audio. Can you respond? You can't hear me. Okay, he can't hear. So you're still playing with your devices, and hopefully you can get that rendered, even if you have to reset and restart your computer. Because I can hear, I can hear some background noise, like when you just put your glasses down. Just so you know. So I don't know if it's picking up the microphone from your computer, but you're not hearing. That's the problem. So, all right. Well, I'll let you work on that as we continue. So, as I was saying, is that Justice Thomas over the weekend at a speech, I believe it was in Austin, had pointed out that progressivism that has taken over our country, and by taking over it, I mean the media, universities, and that are touting this, and it is against our Constitution. It's anti-American. It's anti-Constitution. It's amazing that all this is coming to light on the heels. You want to say the heels or on the toes of our 250th anniversary. When you pause for a moment and think about the history of this great country. But here we are today, and it's okay going forward. What is America going to look like? What are we going to do? And where do we end up here? And and it's we've got to make a choice. Are we either for America or against America? But you have to know, even if you're for America, what does for America mean? And unfortunately, a lot of young people, because civics hasn't been part of the educational process, they have missed out on this critical part of our history. And, Scott has a great book out. We've talked about it many times when he's been on the show. And again, we're still trying to get him connected here. But it's a book I highly recommend. It's rather timeless. It's called Rediscovering America, How the National Holidays Tell an Amazing Story of Who We Are. I mean, he chronicles in this book the great history of our country. And, when you go back, I've often said that I think it's very opportune to go and think about where we started. The way the Bible opens up in the beginning, and you think about, well, in the beginning, and well, in the beginning, America, what was the beginning of America? And, it's often said that, the foundation of our country was based on Judeo-Christian principles. And that's clear. I mean, when you look at the Constitution, the words that were used, the expressions, the idea of freedom itself, the idea that freedom does not come from government, that it is an inalienable right that's given to us by God. And what's the rallying cry in Iran right now? It's about freedom. These people are crying out for freedom. And, and so it's God-given. It's not given to us by the government, because we know if the government gives it to us, they will take away. Now, Scott, I'm seeing you on screen, but I'm not, are you able to hear me yet? Nope, still not, unfortunately. Okay, well, we'll see if somehow he can find the right button, and meanwhile, we'll continue on here. But so, as I said, the people in Iran are realizing that freedom, and they're also realizing, just like our early revolutionaries, what they experience is that freedom comes at a cost. And the thing is about it, it's not just a cost that you pay once. It's a cost that you have to be prepared to pay at any time when freedom is threatened. And the history of our country, when you look at over the 250 years, it's not like it's always been hunky dory. I know people want to be critical about this country, but we knew, for example, that slavery was going to be an issue. I mean, why was it even mentioned? And the way things were mentioned, even in a not so subtle way, that all men are created equal. What do you think that line? What was that put in there for? And the colonies knew that slavery was going to be an issue, but they figure, okay, somehow they would work it out. Well, look at the price that we had to pay. 700,000 just from the North. I think, probably close to 1 million people died in the Civil War that we had in order, to liberate the slaves. And it's been a process since then to, free the slaves. And I think part of it too is a psychological thing, because even, here we are, we made some great inroads. And then it took the Democrats in the mid 60s under LBJ to capture Black America. And, at the time when you look at it, Bob Whitson from the Whitson Institute clearly lays this out, and you can check it out yourself. But, Black America at that time was doing well, home ownership, their involvement with business and entrepreneurship. It was all looking up and looking up for them. Fathers were in homes. 85% of the homes had a father. In marriages were fairly healthy in Black America. And then after LBJ's plan to get Black America to vote Democrat for 100 years, he said, he used a different term, but ultimately it was to get them to vote for 100 years. And that's what he convinced the Southern Democrats to get behind and to pass the bill. And since then, you look at what happened to Black America. Fatherlessness now, it's just the opposite. Instead of 85% being in home, I think it's less than 15% now. And look at what it's done to the kids. It's just, it's heartbreaking to think about it. These are our kids. I mean, forget about color, forget about race and all this. We're one blood. I mean, we're all made in the image of God. And these are our kids that have been abused by politicians for political purposes. And we've freed them. We invested a lot of American blood and treasure. And for what? So that a party could come in for the sake of power and control and capture this part of our community, of our fellow man. And I mean, it's a wonder that we have success stories in spite of all that. Whether you look at, like Dr. Ben Carson, raised by a single mom. I mean, his story, it's well celebrated. And of course, some people in the Black community, they don't like to hear about it because they feel like somehow he must have got some sort of break, or maybe it was a miracle or whatever, however they justify it, instead of being inspired by it to say, look, if Dr. Carson with a single mom, and I think she had, I think Ben Carson said that she only had like a third grade education. If she could raise two young boys and have them be as successful as they are, that should tell us something, that we all have that capacity to be as great as we want to be. But we can be, limited. There can be limits that are sometimes maybe outside of our power to a degree, but that's something to overcome. And my prayer encouragement, again, we all walk in a different set of shoes here. So I'm not trying to, generalize in a way and look at your challenges are your challenges, but it's also your victories are your victories, and they're personal, and they will be in direct relationship to how difficult it is. But there are people that are overcoming. You hear all the time, immigrants who come into the country legally, and they maybe have, a couple of cents. I was talking to a professor up in the Northeast, and he came over from Cuba into America. He and his brother, he had 10 cents in his pocket. Imagine 10 cents in his pocket. And he comes over in a special program from Cuba. I think it was Padre Pio program, I think, something like that, if I'm saying that correctly. Anyway, he had 10 cents in his pocket. The guy goes on to become a professor up in Boston, brilliant economist, and his brother also very successful. And you hear these stories, but the media doesn't want to report on them, but it's real. And this is what's happening. And where else can that possibly happen but America? Because America itself, as Tim Scott will tell you, the country itself is an opportunity zone. I know that he did a lot with Donald Trump in his first administration and Trump's first administration about creating opportunity zones for the the underprivileged, the less fortunate, and they did some great work. But it's like the whole country is an opportunity zone, and we just have to be able to unleash this human potential. I said this. Even when Barack Obama was president, because I had believed, in my estimation and observation, that his administration had oppressed, the human potential of America. And so much so that Barack Obama believed, in his heart of hearts, he believed this, that America's GDP could do no better than 2%. He said, that's just it. We just have to accept that we can only do 2% GDP. Donald Trump comes on the scene and says, heck no, I think we could do 4 or 5%. And Barack Obama and everybody in his administration laughed at him, thought, what does this guy know? He's an outsider. He's just a businessman. What does he know? Well, as things turned out, Donald Trump knew a lot. And look what happened to GDP numbers. We blew the doors off. All of a sudden, when his first administration, he was constantly asking, because I was talking to people who worked in the administration, because I sensed this. Being a businessman and understanding the dynamics, I said, what's the first thing that President Trump asks you every day? He goes, how are we doing with jobs? That was the first thing. How are we doing with jobs? And look what happened to job growth during that first administration, and that first year of his administration. It was awesome. He just kept focusing on job growth, and that's what we got, job growth, after the stifling that was executed by the Obama administration. And he whittled out the middle class, lest you forget. I mean, it's like so many people have forgotten what he did to the middle class. And of course, when he took over healthcare with Obamacare, what a joke that is. I mean, it is so bad that we have to put it on life support at the expense of the American taxpayer. This comes from a president and a party that said, look, if you like your doctor, you got to keep your doctor. You're going to keep the same plan. You heard all the lies, right? And even Joe Wilson at one of the State of the Unions, when Barack Obama was talking about even that illegal immigrants would not have access to the health care that American taxpayers would pay for. Remember that? And Joe Wilson couldn't help himself. I mean, it's so funny because the left even talks about it to this day, like as if we forgot. But I understand with Joe Wilson, it was like a knee-jerk response. He couldn't help himself. The president is lying to everybody. And it wasn't like Joe Wilson went up to the dais and got, the president's script and tore it, in half like Nancy Pelosi did to Donald Trump. But it was a guttural response, a knee-jerk response. And that's a lie. And oh my goodness, everybody got so, dismayed. They were clutching their pearls. Nancy Pelosi didn't know what to do with herself. But guess what? Barack Obama lied, and Joe Wilson, after being chastised, I think they may even tried to do a censure vote on him for that response, right? And now you think, compared to what Joe Wilson said and did, when Donald Trump is giving a State of the Union, and the incivility of the opposing party, it's just not the way to demonstrate what what a democratic republic is all about, how people should conduct themselves. And then they want to be so critical of Donald Trump, and because they see him as being incivil and being brutish and arrogant, and it's just it's ironic and rich coming from them. again, we're checking in with Scott to see if by chance he's hearing us and if things are working better. I guess not. And it's unfortunate because we had some good things to talk about, not only about his book, Rediscovering America, but also some things that are happening right now in our country, from a spiritual standpoint. And, and I think that, you look at the latest statistics that are coming out, how young people are flocking to church. I think it was like 40% of the men, the Gen Xers was reported this morning, over 40% of young men are going to church. And my prayer is that the churches would be prepared, that they would really get in front of this momentum and what these young kids are looking for. Because I will tell you, in my conversation with the young people, the kids want it straight. They want the truth, and they don't want some marketing program, some church that has been put together by some marketing experts and people that do polling and that sort of thing. They want to go to a church that has a heart, that has tradition, that is consistent, and that holds to a biblical worldview, biblical truth that's solid, something that they can count on, that's had a proven record, not just for, a couple of decades, but, for thousands of years. And this is, what these young kids are turning to. And of course, this week we are hearing, we've got America Reads the Bible, that campaign. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in fact, Donald Trump is going to read a couple of chapters, I believe, on Tuesday. So, people, in fact, I was invited, but I couldn't make it there. I'm disappointed because I love the Word of God. I would have loved to participate in reading the Bible. In fact, I was talking to our producer. I said, look, I think we're going to carve out a piece of our show during the weekday and read, a couple of chapters of the Bible to, in solidarity, come alongside those that are reading the Bible. My good friend, Dr. Alex McFarland, I know is one of many who are going to be reading parts of the Bible. And I think this is awesome because this is where we'll find the truth. As I said in the beginning, you go in the beginnings, it opens up the book of Genesis. And if you want to know and have a clear understanding of your world, I mean, just make the time, even just go through the first 13 chapters of the Bible. It'll tell you just about everything you need to know. And just take your time, read through it, and you'll start to see some things, conflicts, and what is going on and how we've been lied to and how you've been misinformed about how our universe operates, a universe that was created by God himself. So you think that, if you want to know what's happening, how about going to the Creator and take your questions to the Creator about what's going on? Why do we have this confusion? Why are we talking about, trans? Why, homosexuality, abortion, all this stuff, drugs, the stuff that is killing people? And, why is this happening in our world? The answers are there in the Bible, and the solution is there in the Word of God. But, if we don't, we know that it's the number one best-selling book still in America, around the world, as a matter of fact. But the problem is it sits on shelves. People aren't reading it. And I can tell you, people who read the Bible consistently, and I'm not talking about one time a week, because some people go, well, I miss and all that. But it's like, look at when you are connected with the Word of God and you realize the benefit of it, you hunger for it. It's like, if Jesus himself, and this is what I say to people, Jesus himself said that he does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the Word of God. Jesus himself said that. So if he said that, think about it. That's hugely significant, at least in my estimation and my understanding. I think, wow, if Jesus, the Son of God, says that he lives, forget about food, but my food is spiritual food. It is the Word of God. It is what comes from the mouth of God. That's what I live for. That's what I live on. And I'm telling you, once you become beyond a student, but a consumer of God's Word on a consistent basis, you will be amazed at the difference and the transformation that will happen in your life. on all things. I mean, things that you maybe have grown to accept and be casual about. And, some might call that sin. Others call it incongruities of and moral conflict. But the bottom line is it's a sin. It's an offense against God. And what offends God offends you and offends your family, it offends your friends and neighbors. And, we've been very, very casual in our culture in thinking that, it's okay, that sin is acceptable. I mean, look at the abortion issue alone. I mean, how many millions of babies have been exterminated? I mean, it's so disgusting. I mean, it's got to the point that, we got some good news. I think it was about 2 weeks ago with David Daleiden. And I met David and spoke with him on several occasions, and a great young man. And he was guilty of, believe it or not, filming Planned Parenthood officials who were selling baby parts. By the way, just in case you have any doubt, it's illegal to sell baby parts. Okay. They were, they had a way in which they were talking about it. If you saw the videos at all about how they would take the baby out of the mother's womb to try to salvage the parts to make sure that they were still saleable. I mean, they were talking as if like they were, selling car parts, at an auto repair shop. It was just disgusting. But as things would work out, and keep in mind, Kamala Harris in California, this happened in California, Kamala Harris was the district attorney at the time. And who does she go after? She goes after David Daleiden. Planned Parenthood to this day, nobody went to jail, nothing. They still get taxpayer money. It's disgusting. But David Daleiden, after I think his legal fees probably are estimated, I think at least $500,000, if not more, over this ordeal that went, 12 years plus. And finally, the judge said, okay, enough. And they cut bait. They didn't necessarily exonerate him. In a sense, it was just typical of what, one party in this country does in terms of lawfare and what they'll do. If they'll come after you, it's not enough just to cancel you and take you off the air and quiet your voice. I mean, now it's no holds barred. I mean, look what happened with Charlie Kirk. Look what happened almost to the president of the United States. Could you imagine if he hadn't turned his head? Could you imagine where we'd be at now? I mean, right now, I'll tell you, we have a lot to look forward to. I think potentially in this country, what Donald Trump has done for us and how he set it up, and his vision that he's cast for the country, that we could have a golden age. I believe that it's very attainable what's happening, because you got, with all the technology that's around the corner and the hardworking ethos of our employee base, because naturally our God-given right and our desire is to be productive. I have found in running businesses and working with people and building teams and that sort of thing, is that the biggest frustration that any employee has is when they're unproductive and they're not living up to their full potential. I often liken it to being a round peg in a square hole, that it doesn't fit. You get friction and it gets uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the employee and the employer and fellow employees. It's no fun. You're not a happy camper. So the challenge of the workplace is, and it's up to us. I mean, individually, if you're around it, if you're a round peg, go find a round hole to work in, to where you can flourish and be happy. Because, the thing is, the odds are really, the nature is such that according to the U.S. labor force, only 1 out of 10 employees in this country are experiencing a fulfilled life at their workplace, that they're happy with it. 1 out of 10, 9 out of 10 are just, anywhere from the scale of being absolutely miserable to just miserable enough to tolerate it, for another paycheck, kind of deal. They just go from paycheck to paycheck and they're not happy and they can't wait to get home and they can't wait for the weekends. And then they get depressed come Sunday because that means they got to get back to this lousy job that they just want to say, hey, take it and shove it. I want nothing to do with it. And it's just that they're miscast. But that's, again, the opportunity we have here in this country is that the opportunity is such that we can exercise self-responsibility, unlike in Iran or unlike in Russia or other places where the government, China, tells you what you're going to do. You get a chance to actually, in this country, exercise the giftings and talents that God has given you. And that's my hope and prayer, for you, is that, for those of you that are still working, is that you find that place that you can realize, true fulfillment. And I would say to you, I don't know if I've shared this story with you, but when I was an adjunct professor in Southern California, I was teaching these kids, and I said to them that, the way it works out is that, when you go to find a job, you want to do something that is enjoyable. Because first of all, when you're at a job, it could be 8-10 hours, and chances are you bring that job home with you. Hopefully it's something that's fun and rewarding, right? The second thing I say is that it's a job where you can be productive and that you can get some wins out of. So I use the example that if you're a brain surgeon, you're killing 9 out of 10 people. That's probably not your gig, right? You need to find something where you can be successful and be productive. Okay, so something you enjoy, something you be productive. The third thing I say is that that you have the giftings and talents that God's blessed you with, that you have the opportunity to exercise and grow those. And you say giftings and talents, what's that about? Well, like Mark Twain says, the 2 most important days of your life is, number 1, the day you're born, and number 2, when you realize why. Okay. So that is wrapped up into this concept of giftings and talents that God's blessed you with. And you can, when you stop and do a study, and I've done this with people before, I just said, hey, what did you like doing when you were a kid? And you just start plotting it out, the things that you enjoyed, and you go, and you connect the dots, and you go, oh, wow, yeah, I did. I sold Girl Scout cookies as a little girl. I had a lemonade stand. I was an entrepreneur. I mean, she was an entrepreneur, didn't even know she was an entrepreneur. And she would always say, this one gal, I hate sales. I'm not a salesperson. I'm going, you just told me when you're a little girl, you're going over the stuff and you're selling stuff, and I think you make it too complex. Sales is about finding out what somebody needs and putting the solution that you have control of in front of that need. And it sells itself. It's not like you have to go in and convince someone into something they don't want. Right. So anyway, number 1, you enjoy what you're doing. 2, that you have a fair chance to win, that you're getting victories and you're not killing anybody or killing lots of people, but that you got more successes than losses. Giftings and talents you've been blessed with, you're exercising and growing them. You have to do that. And that's where I find that people get frustrated, is that they may have a gifting and talent in a corporation, but they're miscast. They're a round peg in a square hole and get a lot of frustration. So they're not happy, and they're a pain for everybody, pain for themselves and their fellow employees. So I said that if you have those 3 things in operation, it'll lead to fulfillment, which is, like I said, according to the U.S. labor study, only 1 in 10 Americans say that they're fulfilled at their place of work, place of labor. So that's really kind of sad. You think about it, right? Only 1 out of 10. Well, as I'm presenting this to this class, and I get to this point that, you want to live a fulfilled life, and this is, the highest calling. And I've done this, speech and presentation, got to be thousands of times over the years. And as I'm coming down to the denouement of everything, to say, okay, here it is, the top of the heap here is fulfillment. I felt like God was getting a hold of me and said, no. And I told the kids, I said, hey, look at, this is hot off the presses. I mean, this is straight from the throne room of God. This is an instant download that the Holy Spirit has given me. And, you heard me talk about fulfillment. It's not, the highest calling we could want is freedom. And when I said that, you should have seen the faces of these kids in the classroom. It was like all of a sudden this light bulb went on. Like, yeah, freedom to be who you are. And here we are in this great country about to celebrate our 250th anniversary, and all the history and everything and the freedoms that we've enjoyed, the freedoms that have been impinged upon. See, but if you don't cherish the freedom like you should, then you'll subordinate it. This is why Ronald Reagan said that, we're one generation away, from losing this democratic republic, to losing our liberties. And look what's happened. Look what has contributed to it. I mean, it has been a planned attack on everything America. This is why I've said, and you may have heard me and caught me on this and wonder, okay, what is Bill talking about? Because I don't want to get into it's a Democratic Party thing or Republican thing, this partisan politics, because that's just manipulative. It's divisive. But really what it comes down to is either that, set that aside. It's either you're pro-American or you're anti-American. Okay, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It's just, do you want the best for America and America's people, the citizens of this country? Do you want the best? Is that what we're aiming for? And I believe that even in the political realm, if you're focused on what the end goal, and the end goal is for the betterment of this country and its people, the process could differ. We may have a different way to get there, but the ideas will be consistent. We will end up at the same place, and we won't have all this bickering and this divisiveness that's going on. And we could truly be the United States of America. I mean, think about it. I mean, because we're so divided, we're $39 trillion in debt and counting, ladies and gentlemen. Social Security, they're saying, we'll be lucky if it lasts to 2030, 6 years. 6 years away, we could lose it all. But, so we have to think about all this stuff. We got to think about the debt. We got to think about, the resources that are here. This is why I'll tell you, I love Donald Trump, that he's looking at all the options. I mean, it's like most presidents come in and they're playing checkers by comparison. Donald Trump is chess on a multiple level. He's playing different things, whether we're talking about tariffs, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Ukraine, whether we're talking about natural resources, whether we're talking about the race to space. I mean, I had a great conversation with Joshua Philippe from Epic Times, and we were talking about what's happening, that here it is. I mean, think about it. We haven't heard about, NASA about going to the moon for how long? All of a sudden, Donald Trump comes up in a year, inside of a year, we're going past the moon, because he realizes, the media is not reporting on this, but let me tell you, the resources that are there on the moon are going to be critical to the future of this great country for at least, maybe 5 decades at least and beyond. And it's a race, because China knows too, and other countries know too. And China will do everything they can to beat us to the moon, however way they can, to claim property, because there's water and there's hydrogen. These are critical elements there, and they want to capture as much of that as possible. And just like they did in the South China Sea, they're going to want to claim that. And so, as they say, he who is there first wins. And Donald Trump is doing everything he can. And here we are. We're off to the moon because of the resources and the minerals that are available to us. And as you hear more and more about minerals and the call and the need for minerals that we must have for the future of this great country of ours, because of AI and the call for energy and, what we're doing in terms of drill, baby, drill. And yes, the Iran issue will be solved. I am confident of this. Again, as I mentioned, we may have a different idea how to get there, but I think Donald Trump has articulated, the key issues, and that is that Iran cannot go nuclear, that their terrorist regime must come to an end. And, just think about what that means. If Iran's IRGC and the mullahs and the Ayatollah are out of the picture, what do you think that's going to mean for the Middle East and the impact that it will have around the world? No more of this blockade stuff at the Strait of Hormuz, no more of these, these terrorist groups that are being supported. Here it is. I mean, it's almost like we're paying for our demise. All these countries that were buying oil from Iran, that were, kind of co-oping with Iran for all this, unbeknownst to them. I mean, I say unbeknownst. I mean, you should have known better. I mean, you got to know if you're buying fuel from them, you're giving them and accessing your funds. You're giving it to them to what? to come in and create all kinds of havoc. And this is not to say, I'm telling you, this is not to say that they're going to go away, because there's other experts, that we've had on our show that have opened my eyes to the fact that, look at, just because you think Iran isn't going to have a nuclear weapon, that doesn't mean the terrorists themselves are not going to do everything they can to get a nuclear weapon. All right. Look at what's happening in these countries in Europe. Who do you think about in Europe who's most vulnerable for some terrorists to come in and capture their military grade weaponry, their nuclear weapons? Can you say England? I mean, look at what's happening there. And there's other countries the same way because they have not watched their border. They're not protecting their security. They're relying on America. And Donald Trump's made it clear that, we're coming pretty much to the end of the rope. So whether it's France or Spain or whoever, it's like, look, you got to ante up and you got to participate in your own national security. We'll be there and we'll help you as we always have. But, the days of America carrying, 70, 80% of NATO's expenses, especially when we're looking at $39 trillion in debt. Again, this is the idea of America first, ladies and gentlemen. Well, look at, I want to thank you for the time and listening to me as we go on. But I believe that, the bottom line here is we have a lot of hope here in America because of this great country, because of what was established 250 years ago. And before that, actually, when you think about, by the way, a great movie out that you got to see, A Great Awakening. This will take you back, pre-revolutionary days to hear the story of George Whitefield and Benjamin Franklin. And this will give you some, greater appreciation, not only for the spiritual foundings of this great country, but what was invested, for freedom and the call for freedom, because that was the thing. We talked about freedom in the streets of what they're shouting for in Iran, what we shouted for. I mean, Patrick Henry said, he finally got to that point and just said, hey, I'm laying it on the line, give me liberty or give me death. That's the way he looked at it, was that kind of binary choice. And that was the rallying cry. And they knew that they were putting it on the line, that to lose liberty was death, that the most important thing they could have was liberty. And that's the call that needs to be, that everybody needs to be reminded of these days, that, liberty is most important. It's cherished and we must protect it. We must be ever vigilant for the liberty that we enjoy here for this country, not only for us, but as in the movie, The Great Awakening, you will see is that, the Whitefield says, well, it's not for us. And he looks out the window and he sees the kids and the grandkids. He goes, it's for them. And that's what we see today. It's not for us. It's for my grandkids and great grandkids. And, and hopefully you see it that way as well. And we come together and truly be what we were originally and always aspired to be, and that is the United States of America. Thank you for being with us. May God bless you and keep you. May make his face shine upon you. May be gracious unto you and give you peace. God bless you.